NHL fans, today is finally the day. Regular season hockey is back. We have a triple header tonight. Let me know down below in the comments which game you guys are most excited for. For me personally, I definitely have to go with Pittsburgh versus Chicago. Bedard going head to head with Sidney Crosby in his NHL debut on opening night should be quite the spectacle. But before the games get underway tonight, I got to get my standings predictions out to you guys. In previous years, I've done individual videos on each division or each conference. In this video, we're just throwing it all together as one. I'm going to be doing my standings predictions for each division, both conferences. Try not to take this too serious. It's just for fun. If I predict your favorite team to finish at the bottom of their division and miss the playoffs, I don't hate your favorite team. I promise. I don't hate any teams. If this is your first time checking out the channel and you want NHL content just like this all year round, hit that subscribe button. And with that being said, let's go ahead and start this video off in the Western Conference with the Pacific Division. Now, when it comes to the Pacific Division, I'm fairly confident on the two teams that will finish at the bottom, and those teams are San Jose in 8th and Anaheim in 7th. I would honestly be surprised if either of these teams find their way out of the bottom two spots in the Pacific this season. The San Jose Sharks are actually my pick to finish with the worst record in the league and have the best odds at the first overall draft pick. I think it's going to be a rough year to be a Sharks fan. Some things to be excited about for sure, with the likes of William Eklund and Thomas Borderlow making the opening night lineup, but I don't think there's going to be a lot of winning in San Jose this season. And when it comes to the Anaheim Ducks, they are still very much in the midst of a rebuild. I do think they're a lot further along than the San Jose Sharks. That's why I have them in 7th, but can't see them finishing ahead of any of the teams I have picked to finish ahead of them. In the 6th seed, this may be a controversial take because they made the playoffs last year, knocked off the defending Stanley Cup champions in round 1, but I have the Seattle Kraken finishing 6th, missing the playoffs. I don't think they're going to be bad by any means. In my opinion, the Pacific is wide open after San Jose and Anaheim. I'm definitely expecting the Seattle Kraken to be in the hunt for a playoff spot down the stretch, but this season I'm picking them to miss. I think they're going to take a little bit of a step back. I think goaltending is a pretty big question mark for the Kraken. They are heading into the season with Philip Grubauer as their starter, and Grubauer was obviously fantastic in the postseason, but in both of his regular seasons with the Kraken so far, he's finished with a sub 900 save percentage. I feel like there were a handful of players on the Kraken this past season that maybe scored at a little bit of an unsustainable pace that should come back down to earth this season. I mean, they had like 8 15-plus goal scorers this past season or something crazy. Moving along now to the 5 seed in the Pacific, I have the Calgary Flames missing the playoffs for the 2nd consecutive season. Just for context, I believe I have 4 teams making the playoffs from each division, so there's no division where I have 5 teams making it. The Calgary Flames are obviously coming off of an incredibly disappointing season. They were expected to be in contention for one of the top 3 seeds in the Pacific last year. Of course, they failed to even make the playoffs. Their big offseason acquisition who came over in the Matthew Tkachuk trade, Jonathan Huberdeau, had a miserable first year in Calgary. He had the largest season-to-season point total drop-off in NHL history. Jacob Markstrom had a really rough season after being a Vezina Trophy candidate the year prior, and those are two things that I don't expect to happen again. I think we're going to see a much better version of Jacob Markstrom this season and also a much better version of Jonathan Huberdeau. That being said, I don't think it's going to be enough to get the Flames back into the postseason. They had a very quiet offseason, didn't make a whole lot of moves, but I think on paper it's safe to say they got worse heading into this season than they were last year. You look at the Tyler Toffoli trade. Toffoli was the Calgary Flames' leading scorer this past season. They dealt him to New Jersey. Now, yes, Igor Sharangovich did come back in that trade, and he should replenish a little bit of the offense lost with Toffoli leaving. Sharangovich should be good for at least, 35 to 45 points, something in that range, but it's hard to imagine him being as productive and being the kind of top line forward that Toffoli was for the Flames last year. There's also massive question marks surrounding the likes of Noah Hanifin and Elias Lindholm, who are both pending UFAs. If the Calgary Flames get off to a very slow start and have a rough first half of the season, I could see a scenario where both of those guys are moved out around the deadline. Next up, finishing in the 4 seed, getting back to the postseason, I have the Vancouver Canucks, who I feel like I'm a lot higher on than most people. In my opinion, the Vancouver Canucks took a big step in the right direction under Rick Tocchet. I think they made some solid under-the-radar moves this offseason, bringing in the likes of Pius Suter and Teddy Bluger, who should both help the penalty kill, which was a league worst penalty kill this past season. When it comes to the blue line, I definitely still have my concerns, but I think you made an addition by subtraction, buying out the likes of Oliver Ekman-Larsson. You're going to have a full season of Philip Hronek. Ian Cole, Carson Soucy should help out defensively. Thatcher Demko is healthy heading into the regular season, which is massive for the Canucks. I think he's going to have a big bounce back year. You have a guy in Elias Pettersson up front who, in my opinion, has the potential to be a perennial perennial Hart Trophy candidate. Ilya Mikheyev is healthy heading into the season. A lot of things to like, a lot of things to look forward to, in my opinion, heading into the season for Canucks fans. So I'm predicting them to finish 4th in the Pacific, making the playoffs. But just for context, like, I know I didn't put point total predictions next to the standing predictions, but I don't think there's going to be that many points separating teams like Calgary and like Seattle. I feel like between those 3 teams, it should be a very, very tight wildcard race. Moving on now to the top 3 seeds in the Pacific, I feel like everybody has these 3 teams in the top 3 in some kind of order, those teams being Edmonton, Vegas, and Los Angeles. Just for the sake of moving along in this video kind of quickly, because we still have 3 other divisions to go through, I'll just quickly run through my predictions for the top 3 seeds in the Pacific. 3rd, I have the Los Angeles Kings. I think their goaltending situation is a massive question mark heading into the season, and definitely the weakest part of the team. I have my doubts on if they even got better by making the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade. Still obviously have a great team though, and even with those concerns, I'm very confident in the fact that they will finish as a top 3 team in the Pacific. 2nd place in the Pacific, I have the defending Stanley Cup champion Vegas Golden Knights. You know, maybe we see a little bit of a Stanley Cup hangover to start the season. They get off to a slow start, but I mean, they're bringing back pretty much the same team that just won the Stanley Cup. I'm very confident in the fact that they're going to be one of the best teams in the Western Conference again. And finally, finishing 1st place in the Pacific, I have the Edmonton Oilers. McDavid, Draisaitl, they're going to dominate throughout the entire regular season. The regular season has not been a problem for the Oilers over the past couple of years. Love the addition of Connor Brown, somebody who has a history of playing with Connor McDavid. He's incredibly fast. I think he's the kind of guy that will be able to keep up with the likes of Draisaitl and McDavid, so I think he's going to be a nice pickup. You're going to have Matthias Ekholm for the entire season, who was obviously a massive get for the Oilers last year around the deadline. I'm expecting the Oilers to have another fantastic regular season and finish 1st place in the Pacific Division. Moving on over now to the Central Division, finishing 8th place. This should be no surprise. I have the Chicago Blackhawks. Is there going to be a lot of eyes on the Blackhawks this season? Yes, because of Connor McDavid. I know I'm going to be watching a lot of Blackhawks games, probably a lot more than I watched this past season. A lot to be excited about, obviously, if you're a Hawks fan, not only with Connor Bedard, but Kevin Korchinski made the opening night lineup, Lucas Reichel as well. Certainly not expecting it to be a boring year for the Chicago Blackhawks and their fans, but I don't really think it's going to translate to a whole lot of wins. There's still a ton of massive holes on that team. Next up, finishing 7th place in the Central, I'm going to go with the St. Louis Blues, missing the playoffs for the 2nd consecutive season. Last season, at least up until the trade deadline, they still had the likes of Ryan O'Reilly, Nola Chari, Vladimir Tarasenko, Ivan Barbashev. You're not going to have any of those guys now for the entire year. The D-core, for the most part, is pretty old with the exception of Scott Perunovich, Nick Leddy, Colton Parayko, Torrey Krug, Justin Falk, Marco Scandella, all in their 30s. The goaltending situation isn't good. I just don't see a scenario where St. Louis is going to be a legitimate threat to make the playoffs in the Central, so I have them finishing 7th. Moving along now to the 6th seed, I'm going with the Arizona Coyotes, who in my opinion, over the course of the offseason, were one of the most improved teams in the league, bringing in the likes of Jason Zucker, Alexander Kerfoot. They brought back Bugstad. They traded for Sean Dursey, signed Matt Dumba. Logan Cooley made the opening night lineup, and he's expected to be one of the best rookies in the NHL this season. He was absolutely electric during the preseason. I think Cooley's the real deal. You add all that to already a pretty solid core that includes the likes of Clayton Keller, Barrett Hayton, Nick Schmaltz, Matthias Michelli, defensemen like JJ Mosier and Juuso Valimaki, who flew under the radar and had very solid seasons last year. I think this is going to be a solid team, maybe even hover around that 500 mark. Do I think they're a legit threat to make the playoffs? No, but the Coyotes are certainly heading in the right direction. Continuing on now, finishing in the 5th seed, I have the Nashville Predators, who are a team that, in my opinion, is kind of stuck in no man's land right now. They don't really have a direction. After trading away the likes of Matthias Ekholm last season, buying out Matt Duchene and trading Ryan Johansson, I thought they were going to head in a rebuilding direction and fully embrace a rebuild or maybe a retool, but that's not really what happened, as then they went out and signed the likes of Ryan O'Reilly, Gustav Nyquist, Luke Shen. This is a team that very clearly still wants to remain competitive in the Central Division, and I think they will, as long as you have that big three of UC Saros, Roman Josi, and Philip Forsberg. I don't think you're going to be an awful team. I feel like aside from Philip Forsberg, though, up front, offense may be hard to come by. There isn't a ton of play drivers on this team. They're definitely going to be relying a lot on young talent up front to carry a lot of that load offensively with the likes of Evangelista, Parsonen, Philip Tomasino, 3-0. I just don't think there's enough there for them to be a legit threat to finish as one of the top 3 seeds in the Central Division. Like I said, I think their goal is to be competitive, and they probably will be, but I'm picking them to miss out on the playoffs, finishing in the 5th seed. Moving along now to the top 4 seeds in the Central. All 4 teams I have making the playoffs. Like I said, I have 4 making it from each division. In 4th place, I'm going with the Minnesota Wild. Not a very busy offseason in Minnesota. They're going to be bringing back, for the most part, the same team, with a couple departures and additions here and there, but nothing of that much significance. The top end talent is there when it comes to the Minnesota Wild. Kirill Kaprizov is one of the absolute best forwards in the league. Matt Boldy is already a beast, and he's only going to continue to get better. Joel Eriksson, one of the better two-way centermen in the league. When it comes to the Wild and their depth, I feel like this is a team that may struggle to get production offensively from their bottom 6, but this is a team that has a great decor defensively. They do struggle to produce offense from the blue line as well, and this past season had great goaltending. If Philip Gustafsson can play anywhere close to the level he played at last season, I think for sure this is a playoff team, but I'm not convinced that this roster has the upside and the firepower to finish as, one of the very top seeds in the Central, so that's why I have them in 4th. Finishing 3rd place in the Central Division, I'm going with the Winnipeg Jets. Obviously, they made headlines the other day signing Connor Hellebuck and Mark Scheifele, both to matching 7-year extensions with an AAV of 8.5 mil. Great news for Jets fans. You're not going to have that, big question mark hanging over the team all season long. This roster on paper, in my opinion, looks very good. And remember, this is a team that weren't they first place in the Western Conference last year? Like a good ways into the season, they just completely fell off the second half of the year. You have a perennial Vezina Trophy candidate in Connor Hellebuck. You have a legit number 1 defenseman in Josh Morrissey. You have the likes of Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele, who are both capable of getting you 40 goals a season. And now the Jets finally have some forwards who are expected to play top 9 roles that actually have some defensive prowess in the likes of Gabriel Velarde and Alex Iafallo, who both came over in the Dubois trade. And I've been very vocal about that trade since it happened. I think there's a chance the Jets may have even improved by making that trade just based off of team needs. And now getting into the top 2 seeds in the Central, finishing 2nd, I have the Colorado Avalanche. In my opinion, last season, depth was a massive issue for the Colorado Avalanche, and it was very evident in the first round against the Seattle Kraken. Their bottom couple of lines just got outmatched, outplayed. The Avalanche have the top end talent with McKinnon, Rantanen, Makar, and Taves, but is the depth going to show up? In my opinion, the Avalanche did a really good job over the offseason of adding depth for cheap, with the likes of Thomas Tatar coming in on a 1-year deal, Jonathan Drouin, who's going to start the season on McKinnon's wing. Ross Colton is a big addition as well. He's going to be a very valuable player for Colorado. Even without their captain, Gabriel Landeskog, I think on paper this is a team that should still definitely be one of the best teams in the Western Conference, and I think they will be. So I'm predicting them to finish 2nd place in the Central, behind, of course, the Dallas Stars, who I have finishing 1st. I was going back and forth on if I was going to go with Colorado 1st or Dallas 2nd, but I knew for sure heading into these predictions that these were going to be my top 2 teams in the Central. Like the Avalanche, the Dallas Stars, have a little bit of everything. They have a legit number 1 goalie in Ottinger, a legit number 1 defenseman in Miro Heiskanen, who's capable of being a Norris Trophy candidate. You have the top end talent up front with the likes of Jason Robertson and Rope Hintz, a good mix of youth and veterans. Wyatt Johnston is expected to only get better. Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin were both productive last season. Joe Pavelski just doesn't seem to age. The Stars made, in my opinion, one of, if not the best signing of the entire offseason, getting Matt Duchene for 1 year at just $3 million. Incredible value there. This is a great team, and I think they're going to have another really good regular season. Moving on over now to the Eastern Conference, starting in the Metro and in the 8th seed, no surprise here, I have the Philadelphia Flyers. Since taking over as Flyers GM, Danny Briere has made it clear that he has a direction, and that direction is a rebuild. We saw them trade out the likes of Kevin Hayes, Ivan Provorov, they got rid of Tony DeAngelo. This is a team that I'm expecting to be in contention for the 1st overall draft pick along with the San Jose Sharks. Despite what John Tortorella might say, this is a team that's going to be bad this year by design. Next up, we have the 7th seed, and I'm going to go with the Columbus Blue Jackets. As much as I want to see them succeed, this is a tough division. I know that they are one of the most improved teams from last year to this season, bringing in the likes of Ivan Provorov, Damon Severson, Adam Fantilli's coming in and expected to be a game-breaking rookie. I think Gaudreau, Fantilli, and Laine on the same line is going to be a ton of fun and has the potential to be fantastic, but aside from that line, if they play together, of course, I'm not sure where the offense is really going to come from. Goaltending is also a massive question mark when it comes to the Blue Jackets brackets. So those are the biggest reasons why I have them in 7th. In 6th, I have the Washington Capitals. So I have them missing the playoffs for the second consecutive season. And really the only reason why I have Washington over Columbus, I mean, these teams are interchangeable, but I just trust Darcy Kemper a lot more than Elvis Merzlikins. I'm expecting both teams to be competitive. I don't think either Washington or Columbus will be bad, but I do feel like it's pretty far-fetched to see either of these teams make the playoffs this year in a very good Metro Division. Next up, we have the 5th seed, and I'm going with the New York Islanders, and it pains me to do this because Ilya Sorokin is my Vezina Trophy pick this year, and anytime you have Sorokin in net, you're going to have a chance to win. In my opinion, he is probably the best goaltender in the NHL right now, but you got to score goals to win games, and I just don't think the offense is there when it comes to this New York Islanders team. I don't think the top end talent is there, especially when you stack them up against teams that I have finishing ahead of them in the Penguins, the Rangers, the Devils, and the Hurricanes. The Islanders are notoriously a very pesky team. Could I see a scenario where they squeak into the playoffs? Yes, I think they're going to be in the wild card hunt, but I have them just missing the playoffs this year. Finishing 4th place in the Metro Division, I have the Pittsburgh Penguins, who have had quite the busy offseason. They brought in the likes of Riley Smith, who I think is a solid under-the-radar addition. Nola Chari, Kyle Dubas brought him in. He must have really liked him in Toronto. And then, of course, the big one, Erik Karlsson. I think what this season really just comes down to for the Penguins is, can the vets stay healthy, the really important ones, the likes of Crosby, Malkin, Letang, and Erik Karlsson. And then, of course, goaltending. What version of Tristan Jarry are we going to get? He's fresh off an extension. I'm hoping the Penguins get back into the playoffs this year because we don't know how many years we have left of the likes of, Crosby and Malkin playing at a really high level. So I selfishly want to see them get back in. So that now brings us to the top 3 seeds in the Metro. And I feel like almost everybody has these 3 teams in the top 3 spots in some order. I'm going to run through them quickly again just to kind of get this video moving along. I know I'm going pretty long here. 3rd place, I have the New York Rangers. 2nd, I have the New Jersey Devils. And 1st place, I have the Carolina Hurricanes, who, if you watched my NHL Awards prediction video, I have them winning the President's Trophy. All 3 of those teams in the Rangers, Devils, and Hurricanes are stacked and have the potential to win the Metro Division. That top 3 is going to be a bloodbath. And now finally, finishing out the video with the Atlantic Division, which in my opinion is the most difficult division to predict heading into this season. And I got some hot takes here. So let's start off with the 8th seed. I think everybody's predicting Montreal to finish 8th. Are they going to be completely awful? I don't think so, but they are a clear step or 2 or 3 or 4 behind every other team in this division heading into the season. So Montreal in 8th. In 7th place, despite being a much improved team, and as much as it pains me to do this, I have the Red Wings. I just don't think the top end talent is there. I just don't think their top end talent stacks up with the other teams in this division, even the likes of Ottawa and Buffalo. Both of those teams, they being Ottawa and Buffalo, I think are a step ahead of the Red Wings in their rebuilding process. So I get the Red Wings finishing 7th, although I could see a scenario where they finish with more points than they finished with last season and still finish 7th, which is crazy. Next up, we have the 6th seed, and this may be a very hot take depending on who you ask. I'm going with the Boston Bruins, going from the historic regular season that they just had to missing the playoffs this season. I just think their center depth isn't good. They're very weak down the middle with Krejci and Bergeron both retiring. I feel like we're going to see a significant step back from Linus Ullmark. They made some solid budget signings, bringing in the likes of James Van Riemsdyk and Kevin Shattenkirk, Morgan Geekie as well as another solid signing, but aside from Pasternak and Marchand, who are obviously special talents, where's the offense going to come from? I guess you can throw Jake DeBrusk in there as well, who's capable of really driving his own line and scoring upwards of 25 goals. I just feel like with a lot of the other teams in the Atlantic Division getting much better and everything the Boston Bruins lost this offseason, I think it's going to be too much to overcome. So I have them finishing 6th. Finishing in 5th place, I have the Ottawa Senators, so I have them just missing out on the playoffs, as again, 4 teams from each division I have making the playoffs. On paper, this is a very good Ottawa team, and it was tough to leave them out of a playoff spot here in my predictions. Their top 6 in terms of their forwards, fantastic. The top end talent is there as Brady Tkachuk and Tim Stützle, both blossoming into superstars. You have 3 fantastic defensemen in Sanderson, Chychrun, and Shabbat. My only real question for this Senators team lies in goal with Jonas Korpisalo. Is he going to be able to live up to that contract? He's never really had a season where he's carried the workload of being a starting goaltender. He's been pretty inconsistent over the years, but aside from my concerns there, this team is looking incredibly strong. Now getting into the top 4, finishing 4th place, getting one of those wildcard spots in the East, I have the Tampa Bay Lightning. The injury to Andrei Vasilevsky, I believe it was back surgery he got, really changes things. He's going to be out for the first few months of the season, and that leaves their starting goaltender as Jonas Johansson. I think this is still a team that's good enough to at least stay afloat while Andrei Vasilevsky is out, and that's why I have them finishing 4th place in the Atlantic and still making the playoffs. But I think it's going to be really close, man. I'm not expecting Tampa Bay to, be one of the powerhouses of the Eastern Conference like they've been for so many years. And it's not just the Vasilevsky injury that makes me feel that way either. This is a team that's lost a lot of depth up front, but I still feel like they have enough there to be a playoff team. So that's why I have them finishing 4th place in the Atlantic. I think this is going to be such a fun division to follow this year. Getting into the top 3 now, finishing 3rd place, I'm going with the Buffalo Sabres. I have them making the playoffs finally after all these years, after just missing out on the playoffs last season. This is an organization that's very clearly headed in the right direction, and I feel like that's the first time you can say that in such a long time. Offensively, I feel like this is a very well-balanced team. You have a legit superstar forward in Tage Thompson. Alex Tuck, legit top-line guy. Dylan Cousins is only getting better. Same with Peterka. Casey Middlestad had a breakthrough season. Zach Benson made the team out of training camp, which is an amazing story. Rasmus Dahlin just signed a massive 8-year extension with an AAV of $11 million. I think this is a team that's going to come out of the gate flying. My biggest concern would definitely lie in net. Is Devin Levi going to be able to be a starting goaltender on a playoff team as a rookie? Is that going to be too much to ask? If Levi struggles, is Comrie or Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen going to be good enough to be starters on a playoff team too? And now finally finishing out the video with my top 2 teams in the Atlantic. Second, I have the Florida Panthers, who are coming off of a run to the Stanley Cup Finals. I think they're going to carry a lot of that momentum into this season. It's definitely going to be tough without Montour and Ekblad to start the year, as the decor without them looks pretty rough. But with teams like Tampa Bay and Boston getting worse, I think Florida should be able to jump over both of those teams, so I have them in second. And then obviously finishing first, I have the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think on paper they are clearly the best team in the Atlantic Division. Their top 9 just looks so lethal. If Ilya Samsonov can give them the same kind of goaltending he gave the Leafs this past season, I don't see any reason why this isn't a top 2 team in the Atlantic again. So that is going to wrap up today's video. Those are my season standings predictions for the 2023-24 NHL season. Like I said at the start of the video, try not to take this too serious. I don't take it too serious. These prediction videos, they're just for fun, and as always, I want to know what you guys are thinking, so let me know what your season standings predictions look like down below in the comments. Where do you think your favorite team will finish? If you guys enjoyed today's video and you're excited for the start of the regular season tonight, then be sure to drop a like. That is the best way to show your support. And most importantly, if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want NHL content just like this all year round, hit that subscribe button, and I'll talk to you all soon. NHL fans, today is finally the day. Regular season hockey is back. We have a triple header tonight. Let me know down below in the comments which game you guys are most excited for. For me personally, I definitely have to go with Pittsburgh versus Chicago. Bedard going head-to-head with Sidney Crosby in his NHL debut on opening night should be quite the spectacle.